Hello, this is Professor Kim Nelson with the Jewelry Design Department at FIT. Another tutorial in our series of tutorials for rhino modeling. This is actually for the capstone course. Continuing on with 3D Coat. In the last video we talked about the workspace, the interface. Now we're going to actually do some modeling. Once again, this is that opening dialog. I don't really need anything from there. Go into the sculpt room. I already understand what these things are asking me to do about light settings and locking the background. It's fine. I want to start to actually model in here. Normally I would plunk something in from Rhino, and I'll show you how to do that in other videos. This video I want to show you how to work directly here in 3D Coat. I'm going to change my grid setting for the purposes of this video here for a minute, and instead of having the placement be auto place, I'm going to go XY plane. That way the grid will stay a consistent grid. Remember, 3D Coat has different orientation than Rhino, so XY, this would be like a front view in Rhino. X and Y. Y and Z would be like a right view. Okay. Z, Y. And then to get what we have like a top C-plane in here is going to be ZX. Okay. Just so we can keep track of where our model is at. And actually, to be friendly with Rhino, we'll leave it for here because this is a look we're used to. I'm going to come over here on my alphas. Going to go to models. Going to go to sphere. Okay. Once I do this, it'll just drop a sphere right into the middle of my scene. Okay. So there it is. I have my sphere. And I'm just going to accept the way it is. We have three, when we bring any geometry in, whether it's from 3D Coat like we just did, or from Rhino, there are three things you want to have checked. Respect negative volumes, import without voxelization, import to separate instances. This is critical when you're coming in from Rhino. And in the appropriate video we'll explain why, but just know that if you're bringing in from Rhino, this has to be checked. Alright? And then I'm going to hit apply. Until I hit apply, it really doesn't exist. It looks like it's here, but it's not. 3D Coat is just giving me a visual representation of the model, but the model hasn't actually entered our scene yet. If we hit apply, it will. It'll give me a little explanation here that if I want it to stay the same scale and everything for export, to say yes. There's no reason to say no, so say yes. It's in. It doesn't look like it's changed at all, but it has. If you look over here, it's now underneath volume 4. Okay? By the way, whenever you create something in 3D Coat, it shows up under the currently highlighted folder. So if I hit apply again, I'll have two spheres. If I click on this sphere and I hit apply again, I'll have a sphere under that sphere, and so on. When you're done, click on one of the standard drawing tools and you'll see that it actually shows up in your scene. Okay? Now I have a whole bunch of spheres here I don't want. So I'll delete this sphere, and that'll delete the subsphere underneath it. So right click, delete, and that'll be gone, and now I just have the one sphere. I want to move and scale that sphere, so I'm going to select it. Just like in Painter, anything you're going to do has to happen once that's selected. I'm going to hit the transform brush, which I can get here, but I have it set on my spacebar as one of my top 10 brushes, so I'll hit it there. This now has a gizmo in position, but you'll notice if you look at the position of the model, it's not in the middle. We want it in the middle. Like in Rhino, you always want to be at 0, 0 if you can. So I'll hit the X spot, and that'll put this in the middle of the scene. And I'd like to scale it. Sculpting software usually likes something to be between 1/4 and 1/3 of the size of this grid, as a general rule. If you click on, and you'll see you get that brush icon. It's kind of meaningless for a transform, but there it is. If you click on that center box and drag, the box looks like it's moving. It really isn't. Your mouse is moving. You'll be able to make this as big as you want it. And somewhere in that area, 1/4, 1/3, somewhere in here. This is good. Okay. Now the size of that gizmo is has to do with your scale, how far in you're scaled in and out. Okay. It kind of stays the same. So my geometry is in. It's at a scale that I want. Going to go back to a regular sculpting tool. I'll pick Rapid 2. Rapid 2 is my favorite brush, and that's right here. So I have my clay. I'm ready to go. Just about. Actually, I'll leave the axis on for a few more minutes. We need to have enough density or resolution in this model to actually sculpt. If I use this the way it comes, the way that 3D Coat generated it, see how pixelated the edges of that is? I don't want that. I don't want that coarse pixelated effect. I need higher resolution. In 3D Coat, I usually will not work with anything under 50,000 faces. I'm really not comfortable doing anything sophisticated under 500,000 faces, and most finished models are around 3 million. You're creating a canvas to sculpt on. You would think, well, let's go ahead and make it as high as we can. You don't want to do that either, because if you set the resolution too high, once you start painting on it, the way we're going to change the resolution is called resample. If we right-click on sphere, resample is right here. This gives us a dialog. The dialog tells us what the current resolution is. And if we're going to change it, we will do that now. I usually go 10 times at least what the native is, but I'm going to go higher than that here. I'm going to go 100,000. And I'm going to set it to smooth. This just is the quality of interpretation you're going to get. Alright? Once I've done this, I've created a canvas. And you can actually see the grain. Okay? Why you didn't see the grain before is a lengthy description about smoothing groups and how 3D geometry is displayed in graphics. Just know that this is the truth. What you saw before was not. This is the actual surface. And you'll see that now, when I sculpt, I'm getting a little less of that pixelation. If I want even less than that, I will undo my resample. Resample again, and this time I'll do it at 500,000. I'll keep doing this until I get a nice smooth brushstroke. That's nice. That'll work. Okay? Here's the thing. I've made my canvas. I have what I want. If I start sculpting on this and I resample it again, if I make a little face, okay, and I come in here and I resample this again, and I say, okay, I want a little more resolution. I'm going to go up to 720,000. See how this all got kind of soft and fuzzy? We're okay with that. That didn't really hurt anything. But it could actually shift an eye. You're changing the canvas typography, so features can actually move. So generally speaking, after you've resampled your initial canvas, you're really not going to be able to use that in the future. And any increase in resolution from then on is done through a different panel, different method. It's done right here. Increase resolution. Problem is, when you do this, the model doubles in resolution. And if you do it again, it doubles some more. Also, as you add more details, 3D Coat will automatically increase the resolution to support the level of detail you're doing to some extent. So the model grows. It gets bigger in resolution. So you want to find a sweet spot when you start off where you have enough resolution to get the job done but not too much, so you have room to grow if you need to. We're going to want to use symmetry when we model in this video. So symmetry, you can access that by just hitting S. Okay, it's also available on the symmetry menu, but you may as well just hit S. Okay, it says that symmetry is enabled, all right, and to show symmetry plane, but we don't see anything. That's because we haven't selected anything. This type is important to understand what it's going to look like. Okay, it took me a long time to figure this out. That's why I left the axis active. If I hit x-axis, it actually means it's going to split the x-axis. It's going to be symmetrical from this side to this side, looking at the x-axis. And you'll see there is my symmetry plane. And now anything I do on one side happens on the other. Okay? You can have symmetry in more than one direction. If I do the y-axis, remember y is up and down, it's going to split that, so it'll be symmetrical from top to bottom. And you can see there's that axis plane. So now it's doing that. And of course, I can do the z-axis. Z is towards and away, so that will split it from front to back. And it's nice that the planes are color-coded. Red for X, green for Y, blue for Z. Okay. We're going to be doing an owl. So for this tutorial, get started with an owl. So we really only want it down the center in the x-axis. So I'm going to go back and uncheck Y and Z. And now I feel comfortable getting rid of that axis icon. If I don't want to look at that plane, I just turn Show Symmetry Plane off. Symmetry is still on. I just don't see the plane. I quite like looking at the plane though, so especially for what we're going to do next, so I'll show it. I need to bring in some reference images that will allow me to sculpt this with more accuracy. But before I do that, there's an important feature that I have neglected in these videos thus far, and that is how to get middle button on a stylus. Okay, there is no middle button on a stylus. Sorry, for those of you who've been wondering. Good thing you've already taken the class, so you know. Mouse, it's easy to find middle button. Stylus, not so much. To do that, you're going to want to set up your Wacom tablet. You can set yours up however you would like, but my way of doing it, okay, is you can actually set it up for just 3D Coat if you want to. Is the front button is middle click, the back button is right click. I pan all the time, so this is the button I use the most. You can set yours up however you want, but one of these has to be middle, one of these has to be right click. That way I can just hit that front button whenever I want to pan. Alright, and the back part of the button if I want to zoom. So, now putting in an image. Image once again is gonna be dependent on where you want to put it. So, we want reference image, okay? So we're going to have a reference image visible from the x-axis. This once again can be tricky because visible from the x-axis means looking down the x-axis. Okay, so I'm going to bring this back. So a reference image for the x-axis is actually looking down the x-axis straight at that. That's not where I want this image. This particular image I want looking dead from the front, which is looking down the z-axis, the blue axis. So I am now going to set the 3D grid to auto. This means the grid will now follow me wherever I go. If I'm looking more towards the front, it becomes a front grid, right grid, top grid. I find that very helpful. Pretty elegant, so I'll do that. So background, reference image for z-axis. And I have the front of my owl's head here. And there he is. When it comes in, usually this is available to you, this little edit panel. If it isn't, you can access it, and I'll show you how. How this works, if you grab the outside bar of this thing, you can move the whole bitmap around. Okay? You can scale by grabbing on this little green, any of these green dots. That'll give you a uniform scale. I want this to be roughly the size of my ball. To move straight up and down, it's a widget. You grab the arrows. Okay? And you can non-uniform scale if you want, but we want precision, so there's no reason we'd want to do that. Okay? I want to line it up exactly with the center, so that's why it's nice to have that grid plane in action. And if I want to, I can actually go now to ortho mode. And that'll make that a little bit easier to do. Okay. And when I'm through with this, I just close. Now, so that's in position. I wanted to actually get this snapped. I didn't have it snapped into a true front view. There we go. So I do need to move it over a little bit. I can see that the beak isn't really lined up. So I'm going to come back to the camera. Background. Edit image placement will give us back this little panel that we need. Slide that over. It's good enough. Alright. Close. And now I want to put in another one for the side. And remember, I just had to rotate, revolve, and then hold Shift key. And it'll give me a nice side view. And you can actually see it says X, and that's nice. We're looking down the X axis. And I want the owl side view. And there that is. And it's the same idea. I want that drawing. It's actually helpful. The x-axis plane there is actually showing me the full size. It fits itself to the model. So I can see that's how big it is. So I can make sure that the bottommost edge of my drawing is lining up with the square box, because it's not easy to see it with the ball right here. That looks pretty good. Okay. And close. Going to use that questionable zoom all thing there. It worked nicely in this case. So there we go. There's a certain amount of flashing that goes on. That's just my video processor keeping up. It's also because I'm recording a movie, which is putting a certain amount of tax on my operating system right now. If I want more images than this, I can put more in the background, of course. But if I just want to look at on the side, there's a third way to bring in images. Under Windows, there's pop-ups. And under pop-ups, pick color palette. This is your color palette. It allows you to choose colors if you're painting or using color work, which we don't really do much in the modeling window, the sculpt window, or sculpt room I should say. But it also allows us to put in an image. And this whole thing is scalable. If you click on the radio button here, it gives you all kinds of options of how to pick out colors. But one of them is image. Now the idea of the image is that you can click anywhere in the image and use that color, but we're not going to use it for that. We're going to utilize image mode to bring in more reference. Okay? So, select allows you to select the image. And that brings in an opportunity to have more of an image to work with. You can navigate this image. If you click on the magnifying glass, go right and left. You can zoom in and out. And pan. And this will usually that will, I would think that's going to delete it, but I'm not sure. Yeah, that will delete it. See, anywhere you click in here, you're not going to get that color. That's what it's meant for. But we don't need it for that. We're using it actually for reference. I can make this as big as I want to, really. And once I have, I can dock it anywhere I want. Or not dock it. My choice. Okay? I'm going to dock it right there. So now when I click on color palette, it becomes visible. Okay. It's a nice way to bring in more reference. Alright, so now we're ready to actually model on the piece. I'm not going to do a lot of that in this video because we're already running long, but let's get started. So, I'm going to do into the ortho side. Actually, let's do ortho front. I'm going to pick the move brush, which is also available right down here. I want to make a pretty dramatic shift to the shape of this model. So I'm going to make a large move brush. The larger this is, the bigger of an area, bigger the area of clay it's going to impact. And I'm going to rotate this around till it's really grabbing the edge. You can work on either side. It's symmetry's on, so whatever I do on one side will be reflected on the other. Yeah, that's pretty good. I'm going to come over to the side. And the same thing, I'm going to grab as close to that front edge as I can. You usually want to do it in steps. You're going to get quite a bit of stretching and distortion in your model if you go too far in one pass. So it's good to come in and do it in steps. I just revolve the view. It's important to hold the shift key down for a second and have that come back to straight ortho. Okay, if I start leaving strange remnants like that, it means I'm not clicking. It's hard because if you leave the model, you're going to get you're going to start navigating, panning and revolving instead of modeling. But if I have little sad areas that are left behind like that, it's because I didn't click enough on the edge. Move tool is a great way to rough things in. Also nice for a certain amount of precision work, but precision work is more iffy. Okay, so now if I want to see it without the I can hit this, and this just hides all. They're still there, they're just not visible. And that'll show me what I've started to create. Okay? Now that looks pretty rough and jagged. There's smooth all. This will smooth the entire model at once. The factor here tells him how much it's going to smooth. I want it to smooth quite a bit, so I'm going to put in 5. Hit OK. Each time I repeat that command, it'll smooth more. Alright. Now, I've stretched this mesh. You can see there are some strange things that have happened. There's been some stretching going on. Now, I can smooth that out easily enough, but I would like to take it into voxel mode for a minute. Voxel actually kind of gives you a clean canvas to start from. It takes these quadrangles and triangles that have been stretched and pulled in the surface and turns them back into uniform cubes of sugar, basically. Kind of gives you a fresh slate. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to turn that into voxel. The model won't look much different. So a little blurb. Surface tools are modifying surface vertices instead of the volume. This approach works much faster than volume-based sculpting. But modification of the surface leads to polygon stretching. So if you feel the surface is stretched too much, press Enter to apply the change, and then transform it back to voxels. In general, we recommend that you click the small cube icon in the Vox tree and get to surface mode. There is much more powerful tool set for surface style modifications. Don't show this hint again. That's Czechoslovakian English for you really don't want to sculpt in voxel mode. You want to sculpt in surface mode. But I don't agree. There are actually some voxel brushes I like very much. Many of them have the same name, but they behave slightly different. For example, one wonderful, I like the fill brush. Now you have fill in surface mode as well. Fill is like pouring in a liquid that fills in the gaps. And so like back here where I have made some real dents, I can fill that in. Actually, it's ironic. On a large scale, it actually works better on surface mode, so I take that back. Another voxel brush I do like very much, though, is Scrape. Scrape is like, not plane, Scrape. Scrape is like a chisel or a rasp, and you can actually come in and scrape away and get nice, kind of hard surface effects, which are sometimes nice. But my main goal for doing this was to give myself a nice uniform canvas, and I will now drop back into sphere. Into surface. So, there's my surface mode. I've already drawn my owl. I'm going to bring back my reference images. And we can hit show all. There we go. And now I'm finding these to be a little too opaque. So opacity I can set here. This is the general opacity, and then there's inside opacity, which means inside of the model it's usually more transparent. I want to see the model more than so I'll drop that down to 15%. Oh, sorry, that did just the opposite. Oh, 0.15. Oops. There. And 0.25. There. That allows my clay to be a little stronger. And I actually would like it to show both planes. I don't know where the other plane went. There. I just had to hit show again. Alright. So, there. Got it. Now I have stylized this bird, as any good design would, from its original. And I don't know if you can tell, but it's going to become a rain. I'm going to turn off my grid. Which I can actually do right here. Okay. I need to scoop out that face a little bit. So I have my Rapid 2 brush, I hope. No, it's Move. Usually when I'm doing fast sculpting, I don't want too much power in the brushstroke itself, but I want a very high-powered smoothing function. So when I hold down the Shift key, I can actually don't know why it's not letting me do what I want to do. Okay, there we go. I'm actually finding those images to be very distracting. I'm sorry. It's the first time usually I just work with an image over here. So coming back to this. So I want to scoop out around the eyes. I do want the elevation in the middle for the beak. Take a look at this reference. I really like the way the roughs are very pronounced around the face. It's like it comes right up to it and then finding that symmetry plane a little distracting. And this part back here that's going to be the ring shank. I will let fall away. Didn't really want to have it get pointy, so use my move brush to give me back some roundness here. I'm not going to worry too much about getting smooth. Smooth is actually very easy to achieve in this software. So anytime I want smoothness back, I can get it. I'm also not going to make the ring, the ring portion in here either. That is something that is much smarter to do in 3D Coat. I'm feeling like I want to actually have that chin pull out a little bit. Even though the drawing I did does not have that so much. And that beak comes right down to the chin. And so on. And I think this is sufficient for the purposes of our video to show what I'm doing. I will work on more. I will work on this more, of course, on my own, and continue in other videos to show what I do with it. But you don't need to watch me click and smooth and click and smooth. Okay, but this is the kind of approach that I use when I model in this software, that I have found to be useful and helpful. By the way, the harder I push, because I have it set for pressure increases depth. If I push soft, I get a little bit of a reaction. If I push hard, I get more of a reaction. So I can affect how hard my tool is hitting the clay by how much pressure I apply. I feel that that whole face creates kind of a bowed effect across the front plane of this owl. So I feel like kind of an African mask effect where that plane comes up. When you're sculpting, guys, it's really smart to keep moving, to revolve around and around and around and around. To see what you're getting. Okay. I'm having fun, so I'll just keep doing this while you get bored. So, I think you get the idea. Alright, thanks so much for watching.